All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking today. It is Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday. And I thought it was a really good Arlen Tuesday yesterday. I hope you enjoyed it. We got to a lot of topics. Tomorrow, I will have probably play tomorrow, a pre-recorded program. I will actually do that recording tonight with friend of the program, Carlos. And one thing I really, really enjoy about my conversations with Carlos is we tend to really see things eye to eye. He does certainly elucidate matters for me and for you, I hope. He certainly does illuminate areas that may be in the dark as far as I'm concerned from my perspective. But we really don't disagree on our takes of the American political system or what we need to do. He may in some ways be even more pessimistic than I am. I do still have some optimism, some hope that we can unite in support of an alternative to the duopoly, to the Republicrats. That's my, I guess, fondest fantasy, really, is that will happen. I don't know that it will. Today's program may or may not give us some hope for that, or maybe just the opposite. Maybe it'll make things even worse, in terms of what we think is possible. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Love to talk to you at any point. It was great to hear yesterday from friend of the program, Ari. I know he is so loyal, and I need some more Aris out there, more loyal viewers who are just, really plugged into this program. We've got some good videos with lots of hits, but haven't really crossed over yet to that state where there's a consistent mass group of folks who are watching, and I hope we get there. That's certainly the goal. All right, let's start as we always do on Halitics. Unfortunately, always, at least means for years now, with the terrible, terrible circumstances in Gaza, direct result of the American foreign policy pursued first by the Harris-Biden administration and now by Trump. That is unwavering support, complete backing of the Netanyahu regime of mass murder. It is as awful as it can possibly be. And you can see this news from Middle East Eye now. The death toll there climbs past 51,300. And I mentioned yesterday, sometimes the numbers are a little squishy. I'm not always certain exactly where we are because different reporting from sources may include deaths during that particular day. Remember, it's 8, 10 hours? I think it's 8, 9 hours later in Gaza. So the toll, when it's reported, for example, there it says 12:28 BST. I guess I don't know what BST stands for. Is that Beirut Standard Time? I really don't know. But regardless, whatever that is, that it means there's already half the day is through there, and that's today. So when that report came out. So there may be deaths that include today or only yesterday. So we don't always get them absolutely perfect. I try to have the numbers reflect the count as of midnight on that day, as the turn of the day that I'm talking about. So through Tuesday, that would be if that's correct. And you can see from Middle East Eye, there's an image of a woman in Gaza looking at the absolute destruction that our bombs and the Israeli military have wreaked on the poor people in that area. And it's horrific. And the goal here is to try to stop that. I had a little bit of optimism. I can't stop saying it when Trump first took office and there was a ceasefire sort of ceasefire, but far, maybe, it was still awful, but maybe a death every few days in Gaza, as opposed to dozens killed every day, as was the case during the last year plus of the Biden-Harris administration, and as is now the case with Trump in power. 39 bodies brought to hospitals across the Gaza Strip in the last 24 hours. Officials say the actual toll is likely higher. We've always given you that caveat since the since the slaughter by Israel began, the use of the attack by Hamas at the Nova Festival, a pretext for all-out genocide. We've seen that Israel and the United States have killed 51,305 identified Gazans, a minimum number. And again, the number is almost certainly much higher. And under Trump, I have a number of 1,805 killed from March 18 through April 22nd. That would be yesterday. 1,805. Likely 1,000 or more children. I've heard people say, the worst thing of all is just the absolute murder of all these children. And it is so heartbreaking. Every life is precious. But when you think of, children, infants, youngsters, it just, you think all the potential, the promise that's just been wiped out by Israel and the United States. Can we hope for change? Now, the title of this program today, the question I'm asking you is, why won't they talk policy? And there's an image of Bernie and AOC because they're on this tour, and this tour is drawing a tremendous amount of attention, huge rallies, huge numbers, 36,000. AOC's raised almost 10 million. Probably it's past $10 million now. I feel like you're wasting your money if you give to them. I feel like this is, she doesn't need it to get reelected. Fine. You want to defray their expenses for their travel. Okay, that makes sense. Obviously, they're way, way, way past whatever expenses they might have had. And in fact, the reports are, I don't know if this is absolutely confirmed. I've seen reports that they're flying on private jets from spot to spot. And does that call into question their commitment to fighting climate crisis? I have some sympathy. Look, you're traveling around. It's unpleasant. Who wants to fly commercial? But too bad. You fly you fly public. If they're not now, they should be. Or they should be taking Teslas or some other electric vehicle if the one rally is near the next. No, don't be flying private. It looks terrible. It is wasteful. You're a public servant. So I have a big problem with that to the extent that's accurate. I know that was posted in Halitics. I went back and forth on that. I'm going to assume they are flying private jets. I don't like it. I have a big problem with that. I mean, flying is bad anyway, but you're a politician, you have to travel, but you don't need to fly private jets. So that right there really does. I mean, this is something that irritates people. This is something that we look at and we say, wait a second, when I fly, I got to go through that security at the airport. It's incredibly unpleasant. I have to wait. I have to file onto the plane. They can't go through the same thing. Now, as a member of Congress, I'm sure they would get much, much better treatment than the, riffraff get. And that's fine. Just sweep them in. Okay, got it. But again, if they're flying private jets, and I really need to confirm that there. Finally got my ringer to ring. Don't know if you heard that, but call in to join me. Your thoughts on this. And I'm just Googling right now, are AOC and Bernie flying private jets? Because it's, you know what it is? According to Fox News, here it is. Sanders and AOC spotted. I got to supposedly let Fox News. I got to allow Fox News to use ads. Am I going to? Fox News is saying that they're taking private jets. Here it is. Why entertainment? AOC under fire for high emission private jet flights during fighting oligarchy tours. Look, I'm not going to defend that. I understand the reason. It is a you know, a hardship for them to have to do all that traveling. But you know what? Put up with it. It's not the end of the world to fly commercial like the rest of us do. And yeah, it's Earth Day, right? We talked about this yesterday. It's a bad look. So this is not the way you win. This is not the way you present yourself as a person of the people. Now, some might say, well, what about Trump? He flies on his private jets all the time. How come it's okay for him? And well, my answer is it's not. He shouldn't be. But I didn't vote for him. I'm not going to vote for him. And his entire message is consistent with his flying on a private jet. Hey, my father worked hard. I'm a successful TV star, whatever you think. You know, he was born at third base and he thought he had a triple. You can say all that. The fact is, the Republican message is, hey, if you got money, you deserve it, even if you inherited it. Somebody had to work hard for that money. You got it. You can spend it. We want you to spend it. We want you to do whatever you want with your money. It's your money. It's not the government. That's their message, right? So Trump's not acting inconsistently with his message in any way. But Bernie and AOC are. And, you know, they're not really talking nearly enough about the climate catastrophe. They're not centering it, just as they aren't centering Israel's murderous regime. But they do bring those topics up to their credit. And it doesn't, you know, it's not just that it doesn't look good. It's clearly it is hypocritical. It's not okay. Don't fly private. I mean, they don't care what I say. And I understand all the arguments. Well, we have to focus on our next appearance and this and that. Well, I would even be fine. You know, you want to fly first class. It's easier than flying coach. I get it. But private jets, chartered. Hey, take one of those buses like, you know, the rock stars do, right? Like B.B. King, right? He used to have that B.B. King bus. I know friend Fred from Monterey once ran into that bus on the, not like collided with it, but, you know, saw them on the highway. So, you know, do that. But the private jets, just no. All right, let's play some clips. I want to get into the tour. Why won't they talk policy? Now, in a way they do. They do talk about how bad Trump's policies are, how he's, you know, inconsistent, how he's fickle, tariffs one day, no tariffs the next, how problematic that is. But when I say, why won't they talk policy? What I'm saying is, why don't they say, hey, vote for progressive Democrats who will enact Medicare for all, who will push for peace. They don't do that. They say these are policies we need to a small degree, but there's no roadmap for getting there. And this is a big change. This is not where Bernie was. 2016, I went to a Bernie rally. There were 5, 6, 8,000 people out there in Manassas, Virginia, and he was real clear. He said, we need to build a country that protects American jobs with tariffs. We need to build a country that protects all Americans from healthcare emergencies with Medicare for all. And then he said, this is how, he said, hey, it's going to be hard to get there. Let me tell you, it's not going to be easy. We're going to have to totally overturn the establishment. But he provided that roadmap. It was Hillary said, oh, we'll wave his magic wand and there'll be fairy dust and everyone will get a pink pony. That's not at all what Bernie said. He was incredibly clear that there was a huge political challenge ahead and that voters were going to have to support challengers to incumbents in both parties. And to be very, very clear that those that they voted for were, going to stand for true pro-worker, pro-peace, pro-environment policies. That's not what you hear now. You don't hear that. You hear none of the talk that you did in 2016 from Bernie, that we have got to take on the establishment class in the Democratic Party and calling out names. I mean, you do hear, who is AOC? She praises them. She praises Jared Golden. She praises Mark Kelly. The only one she goes after is Kyrsten Sinema. Kristen Sinema, who's not in office. Who cares? She's gone. All right, here's Bernie. Or here's AOC, I'm sorry.
Just coming in here today and flying in, we got some very interesting news. Senator Sanders and I got some very interesting news. Here, Montana and Missoula, this is our last stop of the week after crisscrossing the entire country. Let
me just stop it. It's, I got to just say where she says after crisscrossing, it's so onerous on our private jet, right? I mean, it really does. And look, I don't, this kind of stuff, I want to win. So if you're going to have rallies and you really are truly committed to progressive policies, to calling out, I hate when I do those YouTube videos and I put that little box in there, and you're truly committed, AOC, to, fighting tooth and nail tirelessly, which I don't believe you are. I'm going to talk about this, by the way, with Carlos tomorrow. Well, you'll see it tomorrow. You're really committed to that. Yeah, great. I want to win. But the rallies, whatever. I mean, if they help us win, when I say us, I mean the American public win, not you. I mean the American public win by getting good policies. That's great. But you make it harder when you say things like, I've been crisscrossing the country in my private jet. Yeah. Doesn't look so good, does it? Sounds so good, does it?
Idaho. One of the most Republican states in the entire country. We had 20,000 people in Salt Lake City, Utah.
So Sabby points out there are very few. I don't see any really faces of color there. And usually they set up these crowds so they put a kind of a checkerboard, a rainbow behind the speaker. If it's a Democrat, right, they would want some black faces, some brown faces. But they don't have that here, probably because there's so few. Montana's a very white state. But there are a lot of Native Americans, indigenous peoples in that state, in the land of enchantment. So it is a bit odd to me, but I guess they're just not at the rally, or at least they're not behind her, that they didn't try to at least present a more rainbow of folks at this Missoula rally. But I don't find that criticism by Sabby that trenchant. The Democrat Party does not have a black voter problem. It has a voter problem for every other group except for black voters. It's got a white voter problem. It's got a Latino voter problem. It's even starting to get an Asian voter problem. So the fact that there may not be as many black faces in that crowd, I don't think that's a big issue for the Democrats at this point. But what I do note, again, there's no laid out clear set of policies that we champion. And there's a reason for that. There's a very good reason why they do that. It's not because it's easier to win when you stand for nothing. It's because it's a lot easier to get donations from billionaires when you stand for nothing. And they know that if you win, in the end, you'll do what they tell them because you didn't promise the voters anything.
We started off with 36,000 people in Los Angeles. But last night, further north in California, in Folsom, which is also represented by Republicans, we had 30,000 people show up.
So again, obviously there's an incredible hunger among the American people for a champion, a pro-people champion. And they're desperate to believe it's AOC. And, it could be, obviously, look at the crowd. She could lead us to a better place. That's why it's so disappointing that she's not. That's why it's so disappointing that she certainly doesn't appear to be. Now, maybe she is. We'll talk about this, Carlos. So far, sheepdogging people right back into the Democratic fold. That's what's so disappointing, so disheartening. It's also disappointing to me that people fall for this, right? I understand why you want something else, but there's alternatives. It's really tough. You've been a Democrat all your life, or you've seen a duopoly all your life. You really don't even acknowledge that there could be. You don't internally recognize. You can't see beyond that box that we're in, that corporatocracy box that we're in. And AOC, and once Bernie certainly saw through that, right? And now they've just thrown in the towel and no, we're Democrats. That's what we are.
Prior to that, we had visited Colorado, we had visited Nevada, we visited Arizona. And on the way here, we got a very interesting piece of news, which is that some of those Republican House members that we had visited, they just led a letter warning the Republican leadership, saying, we don't know if we can vote for Medicaid cuts now.
And so that's true. So I looked that up and I was like, okay, look, try to be really fair here on Halitics. That is a positive. When Obama got elected, I said the first thing he should do is go into red and purple states and talk about how he's going to make things better for working class people. And that is, to a degree, what Bernie and AOC are doing. So, good. Here we go. From April 16, a dozen House Republicans say no to big Medicaid cuts. What this really does, again, point out is the possibility that is now being lost, the possibility for a truly transformative progressive movement, one that goes far beyond anything the Democratic Party, the Democratic elites will contemplate. One where these Democrats where AOC and Bernie say, we've got to get Medicare for all. We've got to have peace. And if we don't, if the Democratic Party elites, if the Democratic Party leadership will not support those policies, then they have to be voted out. All right, let's go to the phones. Caller, who's this?
This is Carl in Santa Cruz, Hal.
Hey, it's great to hear from you, friend Carl. How are you today?
Next question.
Okay, I'm sorry that the answer probably isn't great. Thanks again for calling. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Let's get to the point. I wasn't able to call yesterday, but I did listen a bit to you and Arlen, and your subject of energy, and you were persistent, and I think you're rather, you're in people's face regarding the idea of climate change, which is important because we need that. And your ideas about carbon and fossil fuels that you were talking about when you were in Monterey. And anyway, you've done a lot, and you've got a lot to offer about it. I've even told you that privately. But I wanted to ask you about something, and I don't know, I didn't have a chance to see much of your show today, and I'm on a short leash, but have you talked about crypto much?
I rarely talk about cryptocurrency, Carl. What's your thoughts on it? I mean, I have some ideas, not a lot. It's not a main focus, but go ahead. You tell us what you're thinking.
Well, I have something that I want to bring up. The matter of energy and the matter of the production of electricity. I understand that crypto uses a great deal of electricity. Isn't that correct?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't want to interrupt you, but I'm nodding. It's a terrible environmental problem.
So here's what I was thinking. The crypto industry to me is a true Ponzi game, or there's a better word for it, but scheme.
Ponzi scheme.
I think you can actually, if you really go crazy or reach out like I do, just printed money and the U.S. Printing money, that's almost like a Ponzi scheme, but it's based in the idea of the faith and credit of the United States, and that supposedly the money is backed by the United States. And crypto is the Wild West. And I don't use crypto, and I'm very interested in precious metals and coins. I have been for a long time. And that's MAGA land, by the way. Many of these people are very much into survival, stuff and guns, and I really feel out of place in that element. However, I happen to enjoy the hobby, if you will, and also the the trading and so forth. And I think with crypto, though, I'm not seeing it anywhere in our society for the little guy. And they say El Salvador, I think, is a country that has it instituted. I don't know how it works. I am not a particularly linear thinking person, and I don't have great concentration skills on stuff like that. However, the people that are using it are using it in a very, very aggressive manner, and it's probably a great tool to hide money and to have dirty money transactions, and much worse than cash, in my opinion. But and I really regret the death of cash, but it looks like that's the way things are going. So here's my point, though, and boy, do I meander. The crypto industry should be paid by the players, the electricity. They should pay for all the electricity in the country, I think, because it's being allowed to operate and use such a high level of power needs and fossil fuels, etc. Maybe they have little nuggets of uranium. I mean, there's no limits that these guys will do. These are real. The money is all it's about, and there's a lot of them, and billionaires know how to do it. So, as we used to say in talk radio, I'll hang up now and ask for your response.
Oh, I didn't want you to hang up yet, but you can, of course. I can't control you. I just shared, Carl, by the way, I was listening closely to everything you said. I do agree that you meandered a little, but I also think where you meandered was valuable. It wasn't like you went off to some la-la land. I mean, it all was pertinent to your main point, which, as I understand it, is that the cryptocurrency, Bitcoin and the like, are incredibly energy intensive to generate the coins themselves and then to find them. And because of this, because of our climate crisis caused by burning fossil fuels, the industry itself should be responsible for paying for not only its consumption of energy, but correct me if I'm wrong, you're saying everyone's, right? Or you want the entire costs of electricity for America to be paid for by? Did you say that? I'm not trying to mischaracterize you. I understood you were saying that, right?
That's what I said. And I'm just on a little short leash, so that's what I was concerned about.
All right, I'll let you go, Carl. Thanks a lot, then. I'll talk about this while you're off the air. I appreciate your call very, very much.
If you got a moment?
Oh, yeah, go ahead. I thought you were done, but yeah, no, continue.
I'm a little thrown off with the TV and all that, but it's actually 10 o'clock, but, that kind of thing. Anyway.
It's 9:30 in California.
I know it is. Thank you. And not to worry, Mr. Carl, I understand. The point, though, about paying for all I haven't thought the economics out about it, of course, but these people are, the Bitcoin has been over 100,000, right? And I don't know if we can have a conversation while I see you talking on the TV.
No, just listen to me through your phone, because otherwise you'll get the timing will be weird for you.
I worked in the industry. I know. My job was telling people to turn the radio down. But here's the deal. I don't have any idea about the numbers. I mean, how much money does it add up to? Probably more than crypto could even generate. But the fact is that Bitcoin went up to over $100,000, I think. It went down to 80,000, but it's still trading in the high 80s and low 90s or something. And that's for a coin, I think. And I don't even want anyone to tell me how it works, because I just don't like the whole idea of it. And the fact that it uses so much energy, I think, is really a situation that should be addressed, because we're paying for that, as well as the crypto people who are putting all that money in their pockets. And you can bet if El Salvador is using money, that shyster guy who sat in the office and smiled with that big smile, what does he call himself? The coolest dictator. I mean, that guy was like a pit boss criminal, just couldn't believe watching that in the Oval Office. And you can bet he came out of that meeting with a lot of money, and specifically crypto, if they use it in his country. And there he can use crypto to who knows how it works. I don't know how it works. I don't know if you use it. You can't buy a hamburger yet, but there are some websites that are accepting it. And I just, if they pay for my electrical bill, that'll be fine.
All right, Carl, thank you. I mean, you had a lot to say there, and I share your disdain for this practice that we've allowed to develop. I do think it's a scam. It's a zero-sum game for sure. It's even it's really a negative-sum game, because the cost of generating the coins and mining them should be factored into the profitability of the entire industry. So it's clearly a negative-sum game. We're on the same page. I think this should be taxed heavily, and I also would posit that my fossil fuels tax would certainly put a huge crimp on this industry, because those who mine and those who generate the coins would have to pay a lot more for the electricity that they're consuming. All right, Carl.
But the crypto is replacing cash, basically, and Trump was calling it a Ponzi scheme a long time ago, and then they got him into it. And once he started to hear the ka-ching, and they get to play with it, now he's like everything else. He flips as soon as it is in his favor, and then he promotes it like it's the best thing it ever was.
Let me ask you a question. I'm going to change the subject, Carl, because we don't have that much time. And I'm not doing this again. I don't want to put you on the spot at all. Okay. I know you tend to be less critical of the Democrats than I am. And we've talked about this. And I know that sometimes my criticism of the Democrats has not gone over well, at least in your circle. So I'm not asking you to criticize. I'm asking you for your thoughts, especially on the day after Earth Day, and especially when you're just talking about the energy consumption that crypto, the burdens that crypto puts on our energy infrastructure, and the consumption of fossil fuels. So I just put on the screen, I showed this earlier. AOC and Bernie have been touring the country, and I think some of their message is valuable, and apparently it's had some real impact. Some more moderate Republicans, or those who represent purple districts, are now saying they will not support big Medicaid cuts, which is a great thing. And maybe they deserve, and it looks like they do deserve credit for that. I just want your take on this. What do you think about the criticism that meaning AOC and Bernie, are getting for at least flying to some of their rally appearances on private jets?
The private jet deal, and for the work that these people have to do, and I know some of them are scoundrels, but, that really doesn't bother me, because I think that's kind of petty to go down on that. They could perhaps travel. I mean, Joe Biden used to ride the train, and look at the heat, that he got with that. I mean, that kind of deal doesn't really bother me so much. I think that the people that are, we're in shock, and we should be. because could you imagine what the rest of the world must have felt like when Hitler was elected in 33, actually particularly in 38, and when everyone outside of Germany could see the war was coming, and every Jew in the United States was worried about their relatives that were in Europe, and rightly so, because they were thrown into ovens, and people should remember that. And I don't want to go, never forget is a slogan of my tribe, if you will. And I'm only a tribe because, I was born in it. I'm one of these, there's a word for it. I'm not a religious Jew. I don't really follow religion. I don't like religion. I don't like dogma. People that try to tell you what God said, I mean, come on. And if you buy that stuff, after a little while, you can take the great lessons from it. But, I don't want to drift too far because you were asking a good question. The leadership's going to come up somewhere. And, I don't know if the charisma of the individual that's going to get the nomination and how it plays out. The Dems have to stop shooting themselves in the foot, and they've always had a reputation of being infighters. For as long as I've been, involved in politics and following it, the Democrats have always been like a circular firing squad, they were described at, and they'd always go off on different tangents. George McGovern, I love George McGovern. Anyway, I really wanted him to win so much, and I just kind of believed that he might. And wow, that was one of the first great disappointments I have. I don't think the progressive wing, I thought I was a progressive until I met Arlen and you and all these people, and, AOC and stuff. This country is not that, liberal, really. It's a very, very,
Well, when you say that, because you've been threatening to drop off, and I was going to let you drop off, but you just said something that really intrigued me, and I want to explore it a little more, Carl. You said you're not that progressive. When you say that, what particular issues are you thinking about? Are you thinking about more identity issues like transgender rights? And you're saying, well, I'm not really that far to the left on that issue? Or are you thinking on, say, Medicare for all? Are you thinking housing is a human right? Are you thinking no American should go into debt to have to pay for their college or graduate school education? Because I think many Americans who say I'm not that far to the left or I'm not that progressive are thinking about issues like, again, just to throw back on the fire the transgender issue. They're saying, hey, I do think that girls only sports should not include trans. I do believe that, there should be female only spaces. So I'm not that far to the left. But if you said, should you be able to go to the doctor without having to write a check, without having to have health insurance, they might say, yeah, I do. So I'm wondering where you specifically are thinking when you say you're not that far to the left.
Well, first of all, I'm an old fart, if I can say that on the air.
Well, you can say anything you like. This is not FCC monitored, so we're good that way.
I hear you, so I could even anyway.
Well, don't, because the towel monitored. I don't like the curses, but you're fine, Carl. Go ahead.
Oh, I think it's really interesting because a lot of conservatives and people that identify as Republicans I really appreciate some of their approaches, but I could never vote for a candidate that is anti-abortion, for instance. And I have my own boundaries. I've realized that. We've both known a transgender person, and And I've had any number of friends that have transgender transitioned, and so more than I ever dreamed. You know, I go back to in my childhood, there was a Christine Jorgensen. Have you ever heard of Christine Jorgensen?
I have. Was she a journalist? I'm thinking. Is that right?
It was a Swedish man that became a woman and turned to Christine, and it was the one that made the papers when I was a young guy. I don't remember the age, but it was like a novelty. You know, what is this? But clearly, there has been a whole large number of real people that have this sexual, you know, they call it I don't even want to go into it.
Well, there's gender dysphoria, which is where you experience great discomfort because your gender doesn't match your sex. But many trans people don't experience that. They just say, hey, I'm not discomforted by it. I just may have a penis, but I am a woman.
It's so arrogant to think that you and Arlen had a conversation yesterday where you said something about telling your children if they should have kids, you know. And I was like, who are you to tell your kid what they're going to do?
It's not quite how, but to be fair, Carl, that's not quite how the conversation went. What I asked was if your child asked you about having children, not you go to your child unsolicited and offer the advice, but rather, what if you're asked? How would you respond?
Yeah. A good point. And, you know, but my point is that trans people are dealing with such persecution that it is just hard to fathom what they have to deal with. And they are very strong, and to be able to manage it, and it must be really tough. And
I can imagine it's incredibly difficult. And at least the one trans person I think you're referring to that we were both friends with, it was very tough for them. I mean, their life was not, and I'm using the neutral pronoun they, not because I believe that was their preferred, but I just don't want to even identify them as little as possible.
Well, you know,
I'm sure maybe people watching or listening know who I'm talking about. Many do. I know life for them was difficult. For others, not so much. Do you think, though, the fact that it is very difficult for trans people for both societal reasons and also probably because it is hard to have your body not match your gender, do you think that means we should welcome trans people into sex single spaces, or there should be no, say, female only spaces, but there could be women only, but we include trans women in that definition?
I don't know how to. I don't know how to really. That's one reason I don't call shows and want to express things like that. You know, like the trans sport thing and so forth. There's only two people I understand in the whole field of the college sports that are trans, and you know, it's a pretty small minority, I think. I'm not sure, and I don't really know the numbers. I think about the one individual. I think about like this guy who's been sent to El Salvador, whose name I can't come up with right now, Iscar or whatever. And you know, if he didn't break the law, what's he doing in jail? How would you feel if you were in jail when you were playing the rules? And let's extrapolate it to the big deal. If in capital punishment, if one innocent person is executed, that is the reason you should not have capital punishment. Because imagine if it was you. Well, you can't imagine it, can you? Because you would never kill anybody. But you just really don't know, and I'm not meaning
I'm so on the same page with you on this, Carl, and I've talked about this on my program. There's no daylight between us on this issue. The idea that people have proposed, well, they didn't get process when they snuck into our country, so why should we give them process How do you know they snuck into this country? How do you know they're here illegally if you don't give them process? That's the whole issue is we give people process because we don't know for a fact that they did whatever we're accusing them of doing.
I understand the guy was brought in with his parents, by his parents. And
if that's the case, then what does the law provide in such a circumstance? And is it ever okay, right? These are questions we have to decide as a society. Is it ever okay to ship people to some horrible gulag where there's terrible overcrowding and people are being tortured? We've tortured people in this country. If we say it's okay, then what do? How do we change our society so we no longer think this kind of cruelty, this barbarity is okay?
Hey, migrants have been under the heel of society wherever they go throughout history. And, one of the things, about the racial situation, where I was talking about language, racial joking and so forth used to be something you could do. Richard Pryor and, there's so many. I don't even want to go into, my recall right now is not particularly sharp either, not like it ever was. But the fact is that you cannot, joke about these things. And in the streets of my family growing up and all that, and the people I knew, it was lighthearted. You did that, and I went to a very diverse school. I don't have any prejudices, I have prejudices because I'm a human being, but I'm not a racist on any level, and I think it's so sick that MAGA wants to bring us back to this sick period where we had this racial discrimination. And I grew up in the 60s, and the civil rights movement is being destroyed, they're trying to destroy it, set it back to Jim Crow days. The DEI, the idea of including people like transgenders, back to your point, should they be accepted in society? Why not? They're humans, of course.
Well, I don't know that a lot of people are saying they shouldn't be accepted. I guess what you're hearing in the red states and some of the blood red districts is you have to call people by their birth pronouns or something. That's not being accepted. So you're right. That's a problem. But I think we do need to distinguish between a failure to respect the individual and the question, again, of sex, of female and male only spaces, which I think is a little bit different. I don't think they're the same thing. I think it's one thing to say if somebody wants to be called by an adopted name, they don't like being called George, they want to be called Jill, then I think you respect that. That's them. What do I care? You want to be called Jill, even if physiologically you seem more masculine to me? I don't care. I'll call you Jill. That's fine. But then there are other questions where it's more of a zero-sum game. Nobody's hurt by calling George Jill or Jill, Jill. No one's hurt by calling Jill Jill. But yeah, there are costs that are associated for people if you permit or or if trans girls are competing on varsity sports teams, then there's fewer spots for others. So I think you have to always recognize that. Hey, Carl, listen, you have been on. I've given you a lot of time, and I loved it, and I appreciate your giving me your time. But I do have a final question. I want to focus you on this because you're very bright. I know you were offered a slot on another radio station because you really impressed the manager there. I know you didn't take it, but you would have done a great job. Here's my question for you. And I know the temptation is to be very critical of voters who support a candidate that you don't like, that you think very little of, that you have disdain for. I get that. But many of the voters who voted for Trump did also vote for the first black president. How do you ever think why or how that might have happened? Oh, I guess we lost him. Oh, I'm sorry to have lost you. I guess Carl had to go. Maybe his phone died, or maybe he just got sick of hearing me chatter. I did want to delve into that with him because I think it's a really interesting question. I want to, we used up a lot of time, which was great. But I do just want to focus a little more because the question for you, the question of today's program, the theme is politics light. Is that what the Democrats are practicing? Not giving us a roadmap, not giving us a vision for the future. And I truly think that is what they are doing. And can this work? And, why are they doing it? And I already answered it because they're donors, they're funders. Even if AOC says, I don't take any PAC money, but she supports Democrats who do. She backs Democrats who take money from weapons manufacturers, from for-profit healthcare. She helps get them elected. So, and she wants, I'm sure she's planning a run for president. And she doesn't want to alienate deep-pocketed donors. But the interests of the PACs and the interests of the American people are diametrically opposed. So you have to choose at some point. Who's your ally? Who's your enemy? Because if one is your ally, the other is your enemy. If you view the American working class, the American poor, the American struggling people, if you view them as your constituents, as the people that you're going to fight for tirelessly, then your enemy is big pharma. Then your enemy is weapons manufacturers. Then your enemy is big oil, big tech. You can't have it both ways. You got to choose. And if you don't choose, then you're telling me that you've chosen big ag, big tech, big oil. That's who you're choosing. And I fear that is who AOC and Bernie have chosen. Sadly, I wish it weren't the case, but seems kind of clear. Let's go to Bernie. Here we go in Montana. I don't remember exactly what he says here. I had so many other clips, but we just won't get to them. That's fine.
And let me tell you something else. We cannot continue to fund under Biden or Trump this horrendous Netanyahu war machine.
I like that. I mean, he's right. And I'm glad he called out Biden because Biden was just as guilty or almost as guilty as Trump of supporting genocide. But there's no roadmap for stopping it. There's no roadmap for stopping. He doesn't say, well, hey, I put a bill out there and 15 other Dems supported it and 30 didn't, 33 didn't. We got to vote them out. Run against, don't vote for them. I don't care how many ads you see. Don't vote for Democrats or Republicans who support genocide. If you say we've got to stop this, Bernie, why'd you speak on behalf of Harris for president? You don't have any credibility, to be perfectly honest with you. All right, a little more from this, because he gets a lot of applause for what he's saying about Palestine. And remember, there was a flag that was, maybe it was at this rally, maybe a different one, a Palestine flag, and he was like, oh, let me tell you. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to talk about it on the terms of his audience. He's got his prepared speech. He's going to go through his litany, and that's the end of it. But on balance, better than others until this part. Oh, people love what he's saying about this.
Israel, like the United States and every other country, has the right to defend itself against terrorism.
See, that's where he goes. He goes to the Israel. It's so incredibly frustrating. Israel is an apartheid state. Israel is an occupying power. Your lead is kind of true, right? I mean, yes, Hamas attacked the music festival. They attacked Israelis. They attacked civilians. In that moment, yes, I suppose legally Israel had a right to defend itself. But Israel created the conditions whereby it's targeted by a group that represents an oppressed, persecuted group, a group that is actually slated for destruction. Israel is responsible for the conditions that created its own enemies. It's Israel's immorality, Israel's cruelty. And that's what Bernie should be saying. And he doesn't say it. So it's policy light. It's not a full and complete or even close description of what we're seeing in this world, in this planet, in this country. They think they're going to win. They think they can win this way. They think they can win by condemning Trump, who, deserves it. They think they can win, meaning AOC and Bernie. They think they can win by simply paying lip service to the generalized notion that Democrats aren't perfect and Democrats have made mistakes too, without identifying who they are, without calling them out, without demanding that they be primaried. Maybe that'll work. It'll work for them, but it won't work for us. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, their presidency did not work for us. Under their presidency, healthcare did not become more affordable. Education did not become more affordable. People's lives did not become easier. Under Harris Biden, the climate catastrophe worsened. So, yes, it may be that you can engage in a politics light, as Bernie and AOC clearly are wont to do, and as the Democratic establishment, the Democratic elites want them to do. And I know James Carville wants them to start their own party. I wish they would. That'd be much better. But on balance, this is not a meaningful challenge to the billionaire elites who actually pull the strings in the Democratic Party. This is not going to move us towards any kind of real liberation. And when I say liberation, I mean that you're free to live your life the way you want without having to do a horrible job and get paid, probably not get paid anywhere near what you need to live a decent life. Very little leisure, an increasingly compromised environment, children whose lives are probably not going to be better than yours, probably most likely be worse. We're not going to get to a better place if we fall for politics light. We have to demand clear, concise specifics about where politicians that we want to vote, that who want our vote, where they're going to take us, what they're going to do, and how they're going to get to a better place. Bernie and AOC aren't doing that. And unless we reject that, we are not going to get to a better place. All right, I want to thank Carl a lot. Show's over. It's not even quite a full hour, but I got a lot more on there, but I'm going to try to get to some of this with Carlos. And then the free for today's Wednesday, right? So then Friday, we'll get to the other stories, including, just why, it's not just, yes, it is the billionaire elites who don't want Democrats to make any promises or demand specific changes in their own party. That is true. There's a cottage industry that is supporting and promoting that type of behavior. And it's very, very unfortunate. It's not helping things. I can promise you that. Okay, that'll do it for, that's an interesting, see if I can get rid of that. Yeah, why won't they talk policy? That's what we talked about today. We'll talk more tomorrow, or at least I'll be broadcasting tomorrow with Carlos from a recorded space. Enjoy your afternoon.